Welcome, everyone. We are here for yet another Mosaic Arts Online live event, and we have a very special guest with us today, Jennifer Kuhns. Jennifer Kuhns is one of our hot top artists here at Mosaic Arts Online with her course Precision Cutting with Stained Glass for Mosaic Art, which many of you maybe know about. But we are really excited to bring her back with a very special course that I think a lot of you have been very interested in. And we're going to discuss today just some of the projects that Jen has worked on over the years. And as a mosaic artist that has created kind of in the same years that Jen has, maybe a little before her, we are built on a lot of trial, error, blood, sweat, and tears. We did not have online courses. We maybe had a few books. We did have a couple workshops as we got better at it, but she's here to kind of hopefully give you some insight into what it took for her to get better as she learned, but then share it with you so that you don't have to have as much blood, sweat, and tears. Everyone needs a little bit, but if we can help you out with that, then this is a great start for you to be here. So I'm really excited to introduce Jennifer Kuhns all the way from Washington. And our internets are all a little funky junky today, so we're going to do the best we can. But we do have a presentation to share with you of Jen's work, and then we'll have some questions to ask her at the end. Please, in the chat, enter where you're from, say hello, and if you do have questions, we will be able to take some of those at the end. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Jennifer Kuhns. And don't forget to stay till the very end because we have a very generous bonus gift for you. So Jen, take it from here.
Okay, I hope there wasn't a delay just then because things are kind of choppy for me, what I can see. So hopefully it'll smooth out here in a little bit. But it's a great honor. I'm really excited to be a part of this today. And I know that there are people out there. I can't see you, so it's a little strange. But I look forward to looking at the chat later and seeing who all is out there watching this. Tami, do you want me to talk more about, should I say a little about myself and how I came to Mosaic?
Yeah, why don't you give a little insight into your mosaics and then we'll start the presentation.
So I'll tell you kind of how I came to it is back in my 20s, I was just dabbling in all sorts of art forms, and I kind of found myself in the recycled art world, and I was selling at recycled art fairs and galleries that focus on reclaimed material art. And Mosaic was just one of those art forms that I was dabbling in until right around the year 2000 is when I was introduced to Mosaic, and I was playing around with it, incorporating it into what I was doing, and then little by little it just took over. It became my thing. And more than anything, stained glass I found really easy to salvage, more so than a lot of other materials, especially in the bright colors I like to work in. So I started learning how to cut it and learning all sorts of techniques with it, and trying to master that. So that became more and more my focus. By 2010, I really decided to let go of a lot of my other mediums I had still been trying to work in, and focus more and more on Mosaic and make that a real business and rebrand my business. I used to be Cosmic Blue Monkey Designs. That was my old business, and I became JK Mosaic right about 2010. And I've been just building it and growing through the years since then. And I guess I would say for me, so, you know, maybe in contrast with some of the other artists who've been featured, I'm coming at it from a very different perspective in that I don't do a lot of wall art. I occasionally do wall art, mainly just to participate in things and to fill in between commissions, but I'm mostly a commission-based artist, and I do more larger scale work that gets installed. It's more functional art. It can be floors, walls, backsplashes, hearth surrounds, things like that. And that is really what I love about Mosaic, is that it's so versatile and it's so useful and durable. and it can be a decorative part of a home and a business, and it can be public art, which has become more of a thing I do now. And that for me, I see myself as, there are a lot of people who talk about whether it's a craft or what mosaic is, and I embrace the term craft. I see myself as a craftsman, and I like that cross between fine art and craft and trade. I'm a tradesman. I have a contractor's license, and so all that combination is how I come to this medium.
Which is awesome. And it's a really great way to open up this conversation and this whole presentation, because we've not had anyone here that has really shared what it's like to not just do these large scale commissions, but the companies that you're working for and the pressure that can be on you to do this stuff. And we're not going to cover the business side of this topic, which there's basically two things that you could cover. The business, which is the contracts and the pricing and all the RFQs, if you're going to go down that road with some of the public art. But we're going to talk more about your process, because really that's what your course is about. And you have some hidden gems in there of what you do to create your mosaic art and how you make it really easy, not easy, but easy and more achievable to do in your studio and transfer to the location. And I think a lot of people would love to know that. Plus, if people want to just do their own backsplash, their own showers, this course and this presentation can just give you kind of, the presentation and insight into really what you share in the course, which is huge. So do you want to start sharing some of your pieces now?
Yeah, let's look at the slides.
Okay, let's see here. Give us a second. All right, here we go.
So this is just a cover slide this project comes up later in the slideshow, but I had this as my title slide. So we can move to the where kind of the early part of my career starts here with I was still working part-time. I was trying to figure out how to make that work and also have a child and this was 2003, and I had a sleep-resistant baby, and I was hired to do this is my first commission for a private home. And so I was doing all these first projects with this baby on my back, but I was getting the work. And when it came down to it, what I realized is that I could make more and I could keep more of my income by doing it this way and take care of my child. So I really started to hustle and try to make it into a real thing. So this is the starting point.
And in this picture, all it says is passion and dedication and a little crazy. So I love this picture because it just says so much. And it's just, to me, it speaks to me. I never had kids, but this speaks to me so much, and I just love it. So, all right, on to the next.
Yeah, what you said just reminded me, it was at that, I was doing that work, and I had a friend there who I was weighing whether or not to pursue this crazy idea of not trying to go back to work and instead try to start my own business. And he said, how do you want your daughter to see you as she grows up? Which is just picture her future and who you are as a mother. And it was, that was life-changing for me, because I really took that to heart. And so anyway, it was on that job that I heard that advice. So the next turning point came in 2007. I had done a business course, and I had just kind of graduated from a 3-month-long business course where I got a lot of coaching on how to create a business plan and how to do taxes and how to get licensed and all those good things. And at the same time that I graduated, this cover art came out. I was selected to be the cover artist for this really popular art festival in Olympia. And so this really launched me, like between having my business plan in place and then getting featured like this. It was a very popular cover. People were asking me to sign it, and I had 16 commissions that year. So I really gained some name recognition with that. And that was another big jumping off point. And the same year, this was one of the commissions, and it's still one of my favorites, where I mosaicked these glass panels, and then they were inserted above this bar in a brand new wine bar. So this is with the lights off. it casts color up onto the ceiling when the lights are on. And there are also some inserted into some of the eating bars where people sit. And I did like that. And I did the sign that's out front, so it's lit. And so that was a big first project for me. I still see that as my first it was my first corporate project, my first real commission. We can go to the next one. This is hard to see what it is when you're looking at a picture, but there's actually a tree cut into this grid. So the homeowner brought me over and said, I want this, her whole thing was done in slate, her whole house. But she didn't want it to just be a plain wall. She wanted something to be sort of create some visual interest, but to still be subtle and organic. So I did this tree. And I think if you go to the next slide, it shows a little more of how I did it, where she had to, I got paid hourly for this. This was like 2011. So it's still, I had been doing it for a while, but I hadn't figured out how to do a more indirect method. So I had to just go drive an hour to her house every day that I worked and just slowly build this by hand in person into the wall, just cut into the slate. So I was working with a tile setter who he and I actually, it was a big step for me because he ended up hiring me to be his assistant for a couple of years whenever he needed help. And I learned a ton from him. So just on the nuts and bolts of tile setting, that was a really great experience. But so this is just an example too of, then she hired me to do her fireplace surround, which was in part because she had messed up the tile grid. So up in the right-hand corner at the top, I was trying to fill in kind of a wonky spot. But again, I had to go every day and just do this directly on the wall, which are, I know tricks now that I share in the course that make it so that I can do all that work at home in my studio and then take it to the client's house instead of driving there every single day and spending hours. This is a close-up of the of part of that. And this is in my own, this is my own home. And this is just me playing around, putting, covering a wall with, you can see the mosaic doesn't have a background to it. It's just the tree and the birds. And one of the things that you'll see, I don't remember how soon the next slide comes up, but this did lead to a commission. Yeah, it led to this pediatric clinic was really inspired by that tree. They liked the style of it, and they had me do these vines. They had me do the sign over at the top where it says Olympia Pediatrics is actually stained glass. And then there are glass on glass panels over the doors, which I think there's a picture in the next frame that show it from the outside and then the inside. But when you're in there in person, the light shines through it. And I haven't been able to get a good picture that shows how it casts all the color onto the floor and walls in the entryway of the pediatric clinic. It's a really nice effect. This is another one where I did my own stairs. I did my stair risers, and it led to a commission that is in the next frame where the client really liked my stairs and wanted something similar for their outdoor stairs that lead down to the Puget Sound, the waterfront area. And so for this one, in the workshop, we do a slideshow, and I talk more and I show some detail shots about how these were made. So this is a community project. I wanted to talk a little bit about community projects and how that's kind of become a part of what I do. I try to mix them in. Most of my work is commissions that are just me and my own artistry. And then in between, I do these projects where I try to bring people together and we can do a bigger project on a smaller budget, and people have this sense of empowerment by being involved in it. The next frames show some more pictures of how it got made. And this was an early learning. I had a lot of learning experiences doing this one because I had people make these fish during a weekend activity, and hundreds of people came. It was crazy. I had waiting lists, and we had to pump out a bunch of extra templates and make do. And I luckily had lots of volunteers that helped they just stuck the pieces onto contact paper. And in the workshop, I talk in more detail about, you know, what all the steps were, and then what some of the challenges were that I faced that I learned from, and then kind of changed it up. And as I went along, I made it easier and easier to do these kinds of projects. Let's see what comes next. This shows that after I did that main project, which I also did, I went to senior centers and I went to Girl Scout troops, and so I had people make all these fish, or like 174 fish. And then we, for 6 weeks, I went downtown and we put them all onto the stanchions, and people were just invited to join me. So I had kind of a group that came regularly, and then otherwise people would just stop by, and people started bringing their guitars down and playing music as the weather got better. And so this is, it was a really exciting project that I just learned a ton from. This was my first community project. It was I had taken a workshop and then I did this, and I just learned a lot. Let's see what the next frame is. I think it's the whole thing. This shows the whole little park. It's just a parklet with, and this is the artesian well where we get fresh, untreated water in Olympia. This is just another example of something like a community project, in that I worked with an elementary school, and to celebrate their 100th anniversary, we had the kids draw pictures, and then we, as a school, selected the pictures that would be turned into Mosaic, and then I made those pictures into Mosaic. Now, to do this, I used a projector, and I projected all of their pictures onto larger panels so that I could copy them exactly. And in the workshop, in the course, the professional installations course, I talked more about some easier ways to do it. I still have that projector, but I don't need it anymore. I have easier.
Yeah, ways. You cover in the course a really great way to make this very achievable for people that are looking to get into community projects and school projects and things like that. This course is perfect to give you ways to do it without, you know, having to leave the studio when you start the creation part of it, which is awesome.
Yeah, because it took me 9 months to create 18 panels like this, and so I was able to do it in my studio and then deliver them, but I have ways that would make it easier now.
And just so people know, Jen did all the mosaic of this. She just took the drawings from the kids and then she created the mosaic. So it's different from the one that you just saw previously where the people created the mosaic. So you can go both ways.
Yeah. These are just some details of just how charming the kids' drawings were, and it was really fun to turn them into mosaic. Here's another one where I had to work direct method. I had the kids actually handling thin set, sticking these pieces to the board, and this was a 1-day activity, and you can see how young the kids were. I had no idea what the age range was. Luckily, I had a couple of volunteers for this who made it possible, and the outcome turned out to be great, and the city of Auburn loves it. They keep it in their Parks and Rec department. But again, I learned a lot while doing it. This is one that I did for the city of Bellingham in 2017 to 2018, where I went to Bellingham. It can take me 6 hours to get each way from where I live. So taking a long time to work with the community would have been really difficult and nearly impossible. So I did a weekend activity where I had the kids basically draw these panels, and there were 9 of them like this. So the kids drew themselves, and I really wanted them to see themselves when it was done. I wanted them, as they're walking to and from school, where these panels are, I wanted them to be able to recognize their drawings clearly. So I put, using the method that I teach in the class, I show how I copied it over the top of their drawings, and then how I was able to wrap them around these cylindrical light post bases they're 3 feet tall and then about 9.5 feet around, and then go and install them in one weekend. This is the first diversity mural, which I was teaching every Friday. I was working with kids at this school. That's a school for It's a small alternative school for high school students who just don't fit in to the main schools, the more mainstream schools. And so we decided, especially after the Pulse nightclub shooting, we started making these hearts. And we decided to make this design where it's a silhouetted person blowing kisses, and then the kisses are hearts, and the hearts make a rainbow. And so I worked with the kids. I had one student who actually designed and painted the figure, and and then people started sending me their hearts. So you can kind of see a little bit of like Joanne Daschle up at the top collected over 100 hearts from her community by doing open studios. And then we did activities where we invited the community to make hearts, and the kids made hearts. So a school in Scotland sent us hearts. And it was another major learning experience. And the lower left-hand picture is a mistake. That's the Artesian Well project again, but I didn't mean to put that one there. But so I learned so much from this project, and then we applied a lot of those lessons to the second version of it, which was coordinated with Sherry Bosella was the lead on this in Orlando, and then which was mainly done with more skilled mosaic artists sending us hearts to incorporate into this one. You can see it's a much more ambitious project.
Yeah, this one was a call from all mosaic artists that are not kids, and it was again for the Pulse nightclub shooting, but in the town that it happened in as well. So it's great that these are actually. Is there only 2 of these, or you have even another one?
There are 2, and I would happily do another one if I could pull it off. It's so much, it's a lot of work, but I'd love to do another one.
Yeah, it's a very inspiring project that can go in a lot of directions to honor a lot of people in a lot of ways. So I love this project so much. It's so beautiful and so well done on both of them.
So this was another community project, and this is another one where I used the contact paper method, and I talk more about that in detail in the course about what some of the pros and cons are of using this method, where you can have the templates under contact paper with the sticky side up and just have them stick the pieces onto it. And then I take that and turn it into the mosaic. I assemble it into the final piece, which in this case was for a tiny house village. So it's a homeless transitional housing sort of area. And this was the day that I installed it. Some of the people who wanted to and chose to have their picture taken because they were just so proud of the project once it was done. And that's another part about doing community projects, is watching people feel empowered and feel engaged and feel valued is priceless. It's just a really great experience. Now I'm getting into some home projects, and this is my backsplash, which I was given a whole box of stained glass that somebody removed from a wall. And I decided to use it to do my backsplash because it would be neutral. It would go with any colors I decided to change my house to, and it would reflect light back. So that's another reason why I chose to do it in mirrors, because I have limited light sources in that room. I took a few pictures. So this is the whole thing. It wraps all the way around my kitchen. It's kind of hard to see the detail of it, and especially it's hard to photograph it because everything in the background gets into the picture. But it was a really fun, it's just a playful mosaic that I just made up as I went along, and it was a great experience.
And what was your substrate that you used on this one with the mirror? And did you worry about the adhesive that would go behind the mirror for the desilvering?
Yeah, I used that DAP Quick Seal for this one. So a different adhesive than I talk about in the course, and I did it directly onto the wall. So I just glued it straight onto the drywall. And when it's indoors and it's dry, that's really not a big deal. And also because it was just for me, I would do it differently if it was a commission, but it's held up really well, and there's been no problems with the mirror. So
yeah, I'm a huge fan of that adhesive as well.
Yeah. This is one where you definitely use thin set. This is my own entryway, and it's almost all salvage tile. And I did part of it on mesh and then moved it in, and then I finished it direct because I just decided it was easier. Because I'm in my own home, it's not as advantageous to do the work separately, except that you could get into a more comfortable position. And so that's what I forgot to say about that backsplash, that I did that direct method. And if I had it to do over with what I know now, I would use the mesh method that I'm teaching in the course, because it was so uncomfortable on my back. I was leaning over that counter, getting into corners. It was months of really uncomfortable work. In the case of this, working direct on a floor is not so bad, but it can be easier to have it on a table and work on something, in a different spot, a more comfortable spot, and then move it into the space. And if I were doing it for a client, I'd have to do it on mesh in sections and then put it back together in their space. This is just another angle. And you can also see my glass on glass window that kind of goes with it thematically. And so in 2014, I got hired by this company, L'Occitane de Provence. They're kind of a boutique body care company. It was at a time too when I hadn't had commissions for a little while, and I was starting to wonder what I was going to do. And then this company offered for me to make these floors for them, and they're stone, which I didn't normally work with, but I learned a lot about working with stone, and I had to pump these out fast. Their deadlines were tight, and they really didn't understand Mosaic and the process, how much time it took. The pay wasn't great, but I learned lessons through doing it, some really hard lessons, some lessons that involved tears, as far as how to put something together so that so I could ship it to the location, because they were all over the United States in these high profile places, and have the contractor open up a crate and find sections that were easy to piece back together and set into their floor. So this is an example of how I made them and shipped them to the contractors. And what else did I learn about that? Working with contractors. And then the other great thing that the lesson from it is that even though at the time this was really, I was miserable a lot of the time, honestly, trying to meet these deadlines, trying to get everything done correctly, sometimes making mistakes and having to redo things. But in the end, not only had I gained some skills that I didn't have previously, and I had a lot more confidence going forward to take on bigger projects and installation projects and all these things. I also had a resume that had, that had a list of, the Prudential Center, the Time Warner Center, the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, Philadelphia Airport. Like, these went into some places that just look really great on my resume and helped me then get some in better projects than I had been able to get before doing this. So sometimes something that seems like it might not be such a great thing it can work out. Then they hired me to do my first larger scale mural in Alpharetta, Georgia. So this is over a boutique store in a new shopping center just outside of Atlanta. And you can see Christy Rose Millich. Some of you will recognize her. So she flew there to meet me, and we did the installation together. We're 2 stories up, and I get into a little more detail when we go through the slides in the course and how exactly this was done. But this is just an example of the kind of thing you can do, and that we were able to get this installation done in 2 days, and it all came together really well. And that's the final product. And then they hired me to do another one. This is one that went into the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, this one was extremely challenging. That's a whole story in and of itself, but it's done and it's still there, and they are happy with it. And then they hired me to do a different mural in Walnut Creek, California. So this one is in a shopping center in Walnut Creek. And Michael Kruzich came because he lives not too far away. He came to help me on this. which was great. I describe a little more of our trials and tribulations and the challenges, things that went wrong in this project and how it was overcome when in the course, but it's a longer conversation than we have time for. This is a 4x6 mural that I made for Mud Bay, which is a pet store chain up here in the Pacific Northwest. And this is in their headquarters. It was for their 30th anniversary. And it's another one where I work over a photograph, and I did it on mesh and then transferred it to a substrate that was still portable, so they can move it if they need to. You can see around the outside edges, there are bolts that hold it to the wall. This one, in the course, there are more detailed, I show the whole process of how this got made. I did Mosaic onto, over templates, and then transferred it on tile board, and then put the tile boards into place, and then worked with a tile setter who did the background tile. So I didn't do the background part, but this is an example of the kind of thing you can learn to do. This one is a project it's up in Port Orchard, Washington, and it's for the skate park. And it's in honor of the guy who really made the skate park happen. So they renamed the park after him, and it's a memorial to him. And this is a little example of some of the steps it took. And so on the right-hand side, you can see that I was able to work horizontally on a table in my studio and have it basically complete. This is actually 2 sections that I have stuck together on the table. It's done, and I was able to take it up by myself and install it in a day, the entire thing done.
And Jen, while we're on this picture, you do have one question from one of your students that might be hopefully on this call, is that, do you pre-grout? And I thought you might give a little hint as to what your process is, and this picture kind of shows it off perfectly. So you want to share a little bit about that, which you obviously go into way more detail in the course.
Well, just to say that so it's by saying it's done and ready to install, it's grouted. So it's grouted in 2 sections, and once I take it up, and there's no substrate on the back. It's just the mosaic that is ready to stick into place on the concrete. But all I have to grout once I get there, and how it speeds up the process, is once I set it in the mortar, all I have to grout is the seams and the edges to get it all like solidified into place and sealed up. So I was able to put it in mortar in the morning and come back in the afternoon and seal up with grout, seal all those seams, and especially without any tile board behind it, then it's much more direct contact. The mosaic is going directly onto the concrete in concrete without there being a tile board in between. And it's easier to handle, and just, it was a really easy install. I was very happy with that. Here are just some pictures, more pictures from in my house. And doing work for yourself is a really great way to learn, because you're not under as much pressure to meet a certain standard for a client. So you can play, you can experiment, and then you put those projects in your portfolio. And then at a time when you do want to start teaching or doing commissions, you get to have examples, and you don't have to say that that's your own house. You can say these are commissions if that's up to you what to say. And another thing about those 2 from the previous screen is that those were both done to cover damage done by the dog. You can see looking ashamed in the background on the right. He dug through these walls while we were on vacation, and so I was able to just use mosaic to cover that up and prevent him from doing it again, because he can't get through that mosaic. So the next shot is my bathroom. We went to Thailand a few years ago and decided we wanted to bring some of that sensibility, the aesthetics, into our home in some way. And so I was inspired by all the temples and palaces that I saw there, and the incredible pattern style of mosaic that I saw, and the designs and the colors. And so I redid my bathroom, and again did worked on tile board, and I talk more about how that's done in the course. These are also for Bellingham, Washington, and these were sidewalk inlays. They were 4 foot 8 inches wide, and I did them in 5 sections. I did the center circles are one section, and then it was divided into 4 sections around that fit in around it. And again, did these in my studio on a table on mesh, and then took them up to the location, which is a good distance from me, and just stuck them into the mortar, into the inlays that were prepared for me. This is my most recent project, my most recent public art project is these boulders that I was hired to do for Tiger, Oregon, down near Portland. It's an outdoor project. I had my design was intended to create some seating, some resting spots along this 3/4 mile long trail that doesn't have lighting, it doesn't have seating, it's a really plain trail. And we had a super short deadline. By the time my contract was actually finalized and I was able to start, it was this past March. It was right as the pandemic was kind of hitting us and that reality was setting in. I had intended to do this project down in Portland. I was going to have a storage space and I was going to work down there. But at the last minute, I had the boulders transported up to me. But I had already, even though I hadn't had the contract yet, I had already started making those individual elements so that I was able to get a head start and put them in place because they were done on mesh. But obviously, because of the contours of the rock, I had to do the rest of it direct method. But then again, we ended up with this pandemic and I wasn't able to go anywhere. I just had these boulders to work on and everything else was canceled. So it all worked out for the best. And in June, I transported the boulders down to Portland and hired cranes and we got them set into place. And I think, yeah, here's a picture of what they look like on the path now that they're in place. And I think that's as far as I took the slideshow, is just up to this point. And then this is the front of my studio that we used as the promotion for this live stream.
Yeah.
And then and we used it in part because this is an example of a project where, I haven't had time to just focus on this area of my studio. So just whenever I have a space of time, usually in the wintertime during the slow times, I'll do a section and I'll do it on mesh in a warm spot. And then when the weather clears up and it becomes mild and dry, I can take that section out and stick it on the wall. And it's always pre-grouted on mesh. And it's pretty easy to just stick up something that would take me months to do. I don't have to stand there and do it direct method.
This is one of my favorite pieces. I love the entry to your studio. It is so colorful, so beautiful. A couple things I want to cover that people might be curious about, but one question someone had is, did you cut the tile that is around your entryway of your front door to your home, the foyer, so that the mosaic could fit in, or did you do it at the same time? How did that whole process work out?
Do you mean like just around the doorway, or I'm not clear which tile? I cut everything.
Did you cut the tile to inlay the mosaic? At the front door of your house, not this piece, the one that's on the floor. Sorry. Yeah, I thought so at first too. No, the one back at the one that's the front door, the blue, the yellow.
Yeah,
did you?
No, I cut all of it. You can, behind me, you can see this is my tile saw. So what I generally do when I'm doing tile work, it's not my strong suit, I would say. It's not my go-to. Stained glass is where my skills are, obviously. But I collect tile. I started with tile, and so what I tend to do is I just cut a lot of small pieces and strips, and then I piece those together. I can cut once they're in strips, I can cut them by hand, or I can use the hammer and hardy. I have one next to me. This just the kind of freestanding kind. I don't have the one that's in wood. And I'm not good with the hammer and hard. You have to say that too. I'm still learning. But it can be really handy when you're cutting really hard material. It saves a lot of your hand, saves pain on your hand. And so yeah, I usually just spend some time on the tile saw. I cut lots of small pieces. I take that in to the workspace that I'm working on, and I use my hands to cut those into smaller pieces and put them together.
And how do you avoid the mesh not being seen through your stained glass, since you are the method of the mesh for this process versus mostly the contact paper and tile tape that some other people like to use?
So are we addressing the fact that sometimes stained glass can have some translucency to it?
Yeah.
And so so I use a white thin set, and it's something I mentioned in the course,
right,
to be really cognizant of when you have a more translucent piece, to make sure you put more of the white thin set in the back to make sure that you don't see the mesh that way.
right, yeah.
And so, I do favor more opaque glass for that kind of project. I tend to use my more translucent glass for glass on glass projects, and then I use my more opaque glass for projects where I'm doing, I'm working on mesh, more architectural.
So you've gotten a couple questions, and just a clarification. They want to know that in the entryway, that's the floor mosaic, and for the shower, were the tiles there before was the floor tile solid and there before you added the mosaic, or were they done at the same time?
With the entryway to my house, I cut the shape of the tile first. I probably would do it the other way now.
So the floor was not fully installed. You did the entire floor.
I did the tile on the floor. So
the field tile and the mosaic went down at the same time.
But I cut the tile. I remember, because that was one of the things that happened, is I was working on mesh and I'd bring it in and I realized it'd be easier for me to just do this direct in that inlay that I had created for myself. But if I, like with the shower, did the mosaic first, it's actually easier to build the tile around it, because those tile cuts are so simple and basic. It's a lot easier to work up against your mosaic in a situation like that.
That's a good question. Someone just asked, did you drill insets into the boulders of your most latest commission?
I hired someone to do that for me. So I drew the lines on, and then I connected with a stone carver who lives about 22 miles from me. Luckily, again, I had someone hired and lined up to do it in Portland, who was going to do it with glass. What is it called? Sandblasting. Sorry. And so they were going to do it for me, and I think I disappointed them because I dropped the ball on them, and I hired the stone carver. But it turned out to be great, because it was right at the beginning of March. We were able to do it kind of social distancing while we were figuring out what the heck was going on. And it took him a couple weeks of just coming out regularly and carving those in. But once he was done with one, I could get started, even though he was still working on the other ones. So it worked out.
I think that's a big thing that needs to be shared with people that are maybe just getting into this style of creating mosaic art. Is it can be very intimidating, but it seems like once you get started on a project, you just do what you have to do to make it work. And there is never one method or one way to create something. There is no book on this style of doing installations. And I think you and I can both agree over our years that everything has had to be done sort of with a very fluid sort of way of creating. So my mermaid, that is sort of the, banner of Mosaic Arts Online, is 7 feet by 3.5 feet. And we knew we couldn't hang something safely that large, and it became a triptych because of that. So you just sort of figure out what has to work to make things happen, and have the confidence that, like you said, do a lot of projects in your own home and mess it up there, or be excited about it there and use it for your portfolio, because that's really the most, I think, safe way to get around some of the bigger mistakes that we could sit here and talk about for hours that you and I had over the years. Your pizza oven, my table, they go on and on and on.
I don't want anyone to hear it and feel badly, but I will say that very often it happens a lot. People will take a workshop and they learn like this one technique in Mosaic, and then they launch their business. And then I get emails from them saying, "Oh, I don't know how to do this."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess what I try to really convey to people is that take this and start practicing.
Yeah.
Don't take this and start offering commissions right away. Do at least a few projects, because every single project I've done, I've faced a new challenge with.
Yep.
And that could mean that I get there and they haven't done their part yet, or they measured it differently than what they told me. And just knowing as you go through and you keep making those mistakes and you learn from them, you then are more equipped for the next challenge. You've already, you've got ideas that you're bringing to it. So, you can take the workshop, and I try to share everything I can think of in this course. I keep calling it a workshop in this course.
Okay. Yeah, the course. Someone asked, and it's really covered in the course, so you don't have to go into too much detail here, but how, when you pre-grouted the skateboard park one, how did it not crack as you were carrying it and installing it? Like, how did the grout not crack? Why was it solid enough to be installed? And I know you cover it in the course, but give a little bit of a background how you made that safely happen.
There are a couple different ways I've done it in different situations, and sometimes what I do is I attach it to another board. So I've got an example in the course that I show where I had these long pieces and I kept them all whole instead of dividing them up, so that I wouldn't have to deal with seams. And I used painter's tape to just tape them onto boards so that I could transport them and just slide them into place from there. With the one that I did in Port Orchard, the skate park one, I reinforced the back with extra mesh. So it was thicker, and then from there, it's a matter of practice how you carry it. There's a way of just being gentle, and sometimes it does crack in places, and then you go back and you regrout and fill that spot in.
And that's okay. Regrouting something that cracks is okay. Someone's asking, how do you deal with the frost heave of your area, or maybe farther east? Here in California, Santa Barbara, we don't have that problem, but you can share some of that.
Yeah, freeze-thaw cycles are a big thing that I talk about a lot in the course. And it really, what it comes down to is your materials more than anything. It's knowing which materials are going to survive a winter and which ones are not. And so I talk about, the fact that I avoid using tile for outdoor projects myself. And I know people who know tile, and they would be the people to go to learn more about that. And I avoid it because even when I think it's good tile, it's high fire, it's been guaranteed, I still have it shear. So I just don't. And
stained glass is okay for freeze thaw. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a lot of projects around here that have been there for years, and they haven't cracked and they haven't fallen apart. They're in great shape.
And I think it's important. I think Jen and I discussed this when she was here shooting the course. It's really important to get to know your tile store reps. It's important to get to know tile setters. You have no business installing things in people's homes unless you are working with someone that does it better than you. It's not something you want to practice on other people's homes. Take it from some very hard experiences in our lives. But now, at least for me, when I do large scale commissions, I actually hire a tile setter to do them. I no longer do what Jen does, but people that are doing their own installations, which is great. I did them for years. Just really consult the people that know what they're doing, because as mosaic artists, I know a lot of people get kind of frustrated with, why do I got to buy a 50-pound bag of thin set or grout or all these materials that we want to use? Why do they come in such big amounts? Well, they come in big amounts because they were never designed for a mosaic artist. You got to think about it like that. We are the ones coming into someone else's world on the installation side. So really learn your materials before you do dive into someone else's community project or home, and just knock it out of the park in your own space, and then feel free to kill it as a mosaic artist, because that's what we want to be known for. As you guys walk on our shoulders, we want it to be because you learned the right way to do it, and it makes it better for all of us.
And in the course, I talk a lot while I'm teaching the
live streaming is on.
you think there's people?
Hi, we are so sorry. That has never happened before, ever in my short career doing these lives. But we're back, and it seems like a few of you have stayed on, quite a few of you. So thank you very much, because there is a big bonus coming, and we're almost at the end. So, but Jen was going on about how important it is to know what your products are and what you're doing before you do go into other people's homes or businesses to do these large installations.
And I was saying, the course also comes with that PDF that is, I just tried to write down everything about which materials work indoors and outdoors, which adhesives are best with what, the substrates that you can use indoors and outdoors, all of that information I tried to think of as much as I could to include. And you can also always ask questions if there's anything that wasn't clear.
And we do have that in the course. There's always a way to ask the instructor questions. But if anyone else have any questions, throw them out there to the chat right now. And while we're doing that, you know, we have a large bonus. Oh, we have a question. Hang on. Oh, Jen, you were going to show your table and give a little like show off of what's going on. Jen's in her studio. Yeah,
I know
she's in her studio right now.
Let me
Your table.
And we're talking about what I'm working on right now, right?
Yes. This is for someone's home. There we go.
So here's this is a private commission. Oh, I've been knocking some pieces off while I've been here. And it's 23 feet 8 inches long by almost 3 feet wide. So I'm working on this. This one is smalty, which is delicious, because I actually got to, like, for the first time, make this giant order of smalty. So I'm trying to zoom in so you can see that there's mesh underneath it. I have my design. You can see my lines that I drew, that I'm following, and I'm making up the colors as I go, which is more fun for me. I lose interest if things are too planned out. But it's basically a river. It's just going to extend from someone's home, like their bay window in their house, out to where it's the waterfront on the Puget Sound and mountain range out front. This is the section that's already completed. I got the first section done, and they're divided up into 2-foot sections. And before I take this up to install it, I'll pre-grout it so that it's going to go in really easily and just where it meets up. Let's see, I'm angling it wrong. You know, I've got some little markers. I've drawn some little arrows on things so that I remember where it meets up with the pieces over here. And then I'll just have to grout the seams. And just to, because they've already poured a concrete inlay for me now. It's really flexible. It's really strong. Even these stones are really on there strong. And I talk in the course about the thin set and why it's important to use really good thin set. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now. Here's a little bit of my studio if you're interested. I've just kind of got glass stored all over the place, just under every surface and against every wall, and broken down into smaller. Those are the bins of kind of my offcuts, and lots of just other things around. This face you can see in the frame here, I did the same way. I worked on a design that I created. I painted it, and then I worked on mesh over the face so that that's just easier for me to work directly over a design. I learned how to do it from Carol Shelkin, where you map out the face, but then I realized I can skip that step. It just speeds up the process for me. It's just a little bit more of the studio. You can see my big roll of mesh down here, which is just, it's like, let's see, this design is 34 inches wide and the mesh is 36 inches wide. So I just have to cut a little bit off. What else do I have? I have my giant egg over here, waiting to go up to an exhibit on Wednesday. I'm delivering that. So my studio is just, it was an old pole barn. It's pretty rough and rugged, and we're still redoing a lot of it. So a lot of this stuff is out because you can kind of see the foyer beyond. Here, I can walk. I forgot I can unplug this and walk. So we just poured the floor in here, and I'm going to be tiling it, and then some of that's out piled up will go in here. You can see my glass on glass side light. So this is what's inside of that picture that's up. I can show you an early piece that I did in tile back when I was first starting out. This is the door that went into an art exhibit, and now it's the door to my side door studio. I promised Tami I would show off. So the demo project that I did when I was in Santa Barbara, I had to do 2 of them. So I brought the one back and I incorporated it into a little welcome sign. I think on my screen it shows backward.
Yes, so this is, while you're all here, because Jen, just stay here for 1 second. This is the owl that becomes very famous in the online course that you're all about to see get launched right now, and you're about to be offered a very large discount for. But just so you know, this owl is very simple. You've just seen some of Jen's most intricate and beautiful work. And this course was not about learning how to do Jen's beautiful, intricate work. Go to Precision Cutting, Stained Glass for Mosaic, her other course if you want that. But if you want to learn the process of how to safely get something up onto a wall or onto a mobile substrate, you learn just with this simple owl. And that was the reason we did it, is it's not about the owl. And you can use any design you want, but if you want to pick out the owl, it's in the course. But that's really just so everyone understands how simple this design was for that reason. This is not about where you can take this. This is about learning this technique and process.
Yeah. So yeah, in the we also have the pattern for this, the supply list for this, if you want to do this design, but you can use any materials, any design you want for the course.
Yeah.
This was just the project.
Yes. Yes.
Here's a little bit of my yard. Oh, there's up here, just without going out of range of my Wi-Fi. This is what's called a hex sign. It's like the Pennsylvania Dutch quilt pattern. I've been putting them on my house in Mosaic, so that's one of them. And I can show you here. I need to go back through here. Trying to move slowly so that you don't get sick. I can. Here's one thing. This was my original. Remember, I said I was Cosmic Blue Monkey Designs. So this was my original sign, and it was on hardy board, which I sealed, thinking that would make it durable. But this just is an example of it didn't last. And I talk more about that in the course, about hardy and why it's not the ideal substrate for outdoors, but it's great for inside. So here's my studio. We've done some painting on the trim since I took that last picture, and it's a little bit of detail of it. I have my sign up top. And so each of these panels, you can kind of see there are some big seams in it because I did them so far apart. You know, I would do one year and then another one the next year. And that's just how I've had to get this done. So that's my little studio mate.
As you can hear, Jen has many studio mates. She rivals me in farm animal sounds when we have the microphone on in her studio or here in Santa Barbara outside. So one more question, Jen. Someone asked, do you use thin set between your tessera and the mesh? And I know you can give a quick little yes to that and share a little bit, but that's a big part of obviously the course as well.
Yeah, I use thin set, and I talk more in the course about which brand of thin set I like and why, and I address weld bond and my experience with that.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people that get a lot of knowledge from a lot of different places, but always know that if you are new to Mosaic Arts Online, we only work with the experts in their technique and style. So this is not just some people that figured something out and decided to share it. These are people that have made a lifestyle of creating mosaic art, and why they're so good at it is because of the years and the workshops they've taken, the workshops they've taught, and the years of putting into creating. So on that note, I would like to offer everybody, and Jen and I both, her latest course, which we're launching right now for 15% off till tomorrow night. And you need that code, installation 15. And this code will only be good till Sunday at midnight, California time. And then the course will be, if you're still not sure about it by Sunday at midnight, or you see this after Sunday at midnight, it will be 10% off with a different code until next Sunday. So we're starting, this is sort of a new thing we're doing, where we're offering the course at our live event and launching it this way. And you get 15% off, and then it will go to 10% for the rest of the launch, like our regular launches go. So if this is what you've been looking for and you want to learn from one of the best, now's your chance to get an extra 5% off for today until Sunday tomorrow. And the code is now in our chat, so you can find it there as well. And I want to thank you so much, Jen, for taking the time and sharing all of this with us and showing us your work. And as we all like said, the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into all of this is awesome, because the end result so far, and you're going to just keep going farther. Like you said, you got to do this last one now with Smalty, which is awesome.
Yep, always something new.
Yeah, keep going, keep going. So I can't thank you enough. I can't thank everybody enough for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you on the next live event. And thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, enjoy the rest of fall that's just started. And, you know, everyone knows I'm a summer junkie, so it's still warm here. We're going into a heat wave, if you can believe that. So it's all great to see everybody, and thank you so much.
Thanks, bye.
Are we off? Woohoo!